Today I want to talk with you about a new Borderlands game. Borderlands 5 will be released on September 12th, 2025, and it's about 5.5 years since the latest installment was published, Borderlands 3, and of course Borderlands 3 and Borderlands 4 are in reality Borderlands 3 in reality is Borderlands 4, and Borderlands 4 in reality is Borderlands 5, because we had a game called Borderlands pre-sequel, which was third game in the series. So this can be misinformation for some of you. And I want to talk about not only a new trailer, because new story trailer was for me a little bit Fortnite-ish, like for very young kids, with many jumps, shoots, monsters, and so on, without any deeper sense. So for me, this was a mistake. That the trailers, especially for games which are, and I think I'm almost sure, Borderlands 4 will be in let's say the title is Borderlands 4, but this is Borderlands 5. So I will in this review I will be talking about Borderlands 5 using Borderlands 5 name, not Borderlands 4. So Borderlands 5 will be a game for adults only, I think. So 17 or 18 years old, something like that. And the game is truly brutal, rather serious. Even if it is a dark humor or a goofy humor, it's still serious, rather obscenic, sometimes sexually, sometimes in different ways. But the most important part before you buy Borderlands 5 will be, what do you know about earlier games? Because first Borderlands was a revolutionary game. In what sense? In sense that it was the first shooter, first person shooter, which combined many elements of RPG games. Before that, shooters were only shooters, without different characters, different classes, and even if there were different classes in shooters, they were mostly multiplayer shooters, like for example Wolfenstein and these game expansions. So for example you had or you have different classes, but without any serious meanings to these different classes. And in Borderlands first, you have four completely different classes. Each class can be built around its skills in probably three or four different builds, or even more. You have three different skill trees. Each class had three different skill trees, and the skills were firstly very beautifully shown to us, very beautifully written, big, very crispy, catching an eye, and you also saw them working on the battlefield. You saw them in case, for example, you used let's say toxic damage. So you see that your rifles and wounds on your enemies are shining in green. When you use skills with electrician, you saw the electricity on them. When you used fire, they were melting, and so on was with the weapons. So the weapons can use different elements, mainly in first game, fire, toxic damage, electric damage, fire damage, and explosive damage. And you saw that this damage is shown to you in the game. So it was very satisfactory to play this game. And also it was a very important factor than guns, which in earlier first person shooters they were only impressive because of their high better looking and higher power. And here you see that there are different classes of weapons. So for example, in Borderlands 1 you have pistols like revolvers, you have repeaters, so like let's say pistols who can shoot like machine guns. You have small machine guns, you have combat rifles, you have bazookas, and you also have Iridian weapons, so alien technology weapons. And for example, pistols, where there were two different categories of pistols, because repeaters were completely separate category of semi-machine gun pistols. But for example, even normal pistols had to have two categories: revolvers and standard issue pistols like Glock and so on. And each of these class of weapons worked completely different. And many of them they were also quality differences, because for example it was the first person shooter which presented us to mechanics known from, for example, World of Warcraft, many MMORPGs, that white weapons are standard basic weapons. Then you have green weapons, a little bit better than white ones. Then you have blue ones, which are better than green and white. Then you have purple, which are better than green, blue, and white. And at the end, you have orange weapons, and they have also different magnitude of this color. And I think the difference was real, not only in magnitude of the color of the weapon, of the title of the weapon, because the weapon was not orange, just the title of the weapon, the name of the weapon was different, but also this orange color differs in magnitude, in scale, in let's say in contrast, and they were also different in power. And at the end, but just when the DLCs were presented, we have right now at the top pearl scent weapons, but these one are special in this regard, because there is only one type of pearl scent weapon. So for example, you have only one SMG pearl scent weapon, you have one shotgun pearl scent weapon, and in orange, green, purple and blue you have different categories of weapons. Almost all categories can be like that, but pearl scent weapons were unique in the factor that you have only one shotgun pearl scent, one SMG, one bazooka and so on, and they were extremely rare. And also you have mods changing your grenades and your grenades power, and you have also mods showing your shield and changing the purpose and the value and the work of the shield and your health. So for example, some mods were very valuable because they were not consuming ammo. So because each of the weapon has an ammo magazine, and for example, these mods were the best mods were those who regenerated ammo automatically. But you also have mods to your power of your shields, to regeneration of your health, but also mods adding another points to your skills. And you have also levels. 69 in with all DLCs, or 67 in Borderlands 1. So you see that the game was huge, and the RPG aspect was really impressive, because every skill tree, every skill. There were like 5 points max you can put to the skill, and then you have more with your mods, but the combination of these skills created completely different builds. And of course you also have your specialty skill. So there were 4 classes in Borderlands 1. There was a berserker, there was a siren, there was a soldier, and there was a hunter, and each of them could specialize in different classes of weapons, and their class skill could also be altered and changed. So, for example, Berserk or Brawler could use his skill to be this humongous abomination berserker, feasting his enemies with melee attacks. Soldier had a unique skill with a combat rifle with different abilities. This rifle, for example, had a shield field which you can cover behind when you were shooting at your enemies. Siren could burst in speed and become invisible, and Hunter had probably the less useful skill to use his pet to attack his enemies. But also these skills could be altered in skill trees. So I would not be afraid to say that Borderlands series games are the most advanced first-person shooters with RPG elements, to the point that you can also say that they are not FPS or loot shooters, as they are called today, but they are fully grown RPG games, because they have also quests, something which was completely new in FPS genre, that you have different quests. You have main quests, but you also have these less important secondary quests. So it was really, when you were playing Borderlands, you felt like you are playing RPG game, but with humongous element of FPS game. And it is until now. So it is until now. Borderlands series are very famous. I think Borderlands 3 sold in record numbers. So right now, of course, players are pissed because the games are higher in price. They will be like $80 or $90, Borderlands 5. But besides that, and besides, of course, the important factor that every Borderlands game except a pre-sequel has many DLCs, I think 3 or 4 each of them, each game, and they are Gearbox and 2K are making a rather long and rather good DLCs. So they are not like standalone short adventures. They are rather sometimes very long, completely different stories. So for example, Borderlands 3 was published in 2019, but I bought it with all DLCs 1 year ago, because with all DLCs it was insanely expensive, but there were a Steam sale with a 90% discount. So just only after that I bought new Borderlands game, and usually I would advise to wait until all DLCs are published and just then buy on Steam sale this game. Of course, publishers who are hearing this from 2K and Gearbox are terrified, because they expect that some people, couple of millions people, will buy Borderlands 5 immediately. But also, I'm wondering if there will be a significant change from Borderlands 4 to Borderlands 5. So, because for example, when I saw on YouTube's trailers of Borderlands 4, which is officially called Borderlands 3, I was not very impressed by the graphics, because I thought, oh my god, this is the same graphic as Borderlands 2, and then I haven't played Borderlands prequel, but fortunately for me, Borderlands 3 was a huge improvement on graphics. It was huge improvement on graphics, because YouTube mostly showing us those games in rather low quality, packed. So it didn't good as impressive as when I was playing it on my PC. And Borderlands 3 was a really improvement, even when we count Borderlands prequel. So Borderlands 3 has amazing graphics. It was the first game from this studio and in our genre on Unreal Engine 5, and everything except in a graphic field, everything except it was too flashy and too light. It was the flashiest and the most beaming, lightning game in Borderlands series. So for example, I could only play it for like 2-3 hours in one day, because it was too flashy for me. Even if I disabled all the graphics and I changed all the brightness in my PC, it was still very bright. But except that, graphics, movement of creatures, our beloved skags, for example, everything was improved. When we, in comparison to other Borderlands game, gameplay or fighting with the enemies is the best in Borderlands 5. But there were also a second issue, I think, that graphic hub and graphic interface was not as sharp as, for example, in Borderlands 1, because Borderlands 1 has the biggest and the sharpest menu and skill trees. So everything was sharp, very good looking, eye-catching, and unfortunately, since Borderlands 2, skill tree is a little bit too small for me, and a little bit too not very not contrasted, not eye-catching, not very sharp, not enough sharp. So I'm hoping that they will change it in this newest installment, because in Borderlands 1 you see big icons, very beautifully created, with very even charming graphic, eye-catching graphic, very pleasant graphic of an icon of a skill. So for example, when you put your points in this skill, you also have this satisfaction that that you do something artistically pleasant, that your characters is stronger. You feel good adding even your skill points to your skills. And in the latest installment, even though skills in Borderlands 5 are in Borderlands 4, they work, I would say, even better, and they are constructed better, considering the build, the calculations, the possibilities. They work better they work the best from all games before Borderlands 4, because in Borderlands 4, which is officially called Borderlands 3, in Borderlands 4 they focused mainly that your special skill, your class skill, is very connected to the skill points and to the skill trees. For example, you have a woman who can as her class skill is moving of or hovering with gigantic mech. And this mech can, for example, from skill trees, he can be improved to, for example, shoot two miniguns, two lasers, two flamethrowers, two rocket launchers, and with completely different combinations, completely different elements. So this is the first game when skill points or class skills were tightly connected to skill points, and it worked beautifully, worked marvelously. So for example, you have a Beastmaster, because in I think in Borderlands 1 you have 4 classes. In Borderlands 2 you have 6 classes, 6 different classes. In Borderlands prequel I think you also have 6 classes, because they were added, later classes were added with DLC. And in Borderlands 3, even if you have all the DLCs, there are 3 or 4 of them, you only have 4 classes, but each class is squeezed to the core. The abilities, for example, you have Zane, and Zane can, for example, use 2 different special class skills, because different other classes can, for example, use only 1 class skill at a time, and Zane can, for example, use 2 of them. This is his special trait. You have, for example, Beastmaster, and he can summon a skag, and this skag, for example, can be improved in quantity. He has more armor, he has more damage, and so on. But he can also be changed in a different way. That he is a more potent, more elemental, more frightening, bigger skag. So and it looked amazing on the battlefield. And the only disadvantage of the graphics is that because it's not as sharp as in Borderlands 1, and I think there are more elements, it's more bright, you often don't see what are you doing. You don't see what are you doing, because there are too many colors, too many fighters, too many warriors, too many enemies. So often you completely don't see what is happening on the battlefield. Only when you, for example, kill most of the enemies, you see, okay, this is a chest, this is a tree, this is a mountain, this is my vehicle, this is my skag. So this is even though graphic is very beautiful on Unreal Engine 5, it looks really amazing. It's a little bit confusing with too many elements, because, for example, you have very famous red chests in Borderlands. They are almost the best chests in the game, but they are and they are created very beautifully, but their color is is mixed with the color of the environment, and you very often you cannot see the red chest. You can just walk next to the chest, and you will just omit it. And it was impossible in Borderlands 1 and even in Borderlands 2. So I would say the graphic is more beautiful and more advanced in the newest Borderlands, but the sharpest graphic and the best looking graphic in case you see different objects is still Borderlands 1, because in Borderlands 1 there were less objects, but they were created completely different from each other, and you can discern what is what. This is a chest, this is an enemy, this is a skag enemy, this is a psycho enemy, this is a badass enemy, this is a water, this is a chest, this is a white chest, this is a red chest, this is a super chest, because in Borderlands 1 DLCs created these super chests. This is an ammo pack, this is a gun, this is a rifle, this is a bazooka. And in Borderlands 5, unfortunately, the graphic is, for me, too bright. It's too colorful and too bright. They should change it. I hope they changed it to be less. And often in Borderlands 5, 4, you see that, for example, even your menu is shaking or is flashing because you were, for example, burned or poisoned, and all is shaking, all is poisonous, all is green, and so on. And this is very disturbing, for example, for me, because for my eyesight and so on, and I'm rather fragile on these types of graphic elements. So I would say that first was better. Then you, for example, saw that, yeah, okay, your enemy is poisoned, and for example, he's dying in this horrible way of poison or of being completely melted by your firing gun, or he was completely zapped by your electrical gun. But your menu was okay, it was gray, it was not very flashy, you see everything. And in Borderlands 4, this is the issue. So I hope that someone who is hearing my review from Gearbox or a Gearbox or 2K can maybe improve it in the future if it's not improved so far. So I would say that Gearbox and 2K are doing the thing which can be criticized to be repeatable, because some of the players, some of the YouTubers were playing in demo of this game, and the one critics, the one main disadvantage was that it's too similar to other Borderlands game. But I would say that different path was chosen by, for example, very famous studio of BioWare when they were creating a very famous, very good RPG games, and they decided and started to for example, put or create different genre. For example, they created an Anthem game, which was supposed to be a looter shooter, and the game was very mediocre, and in sales it was rather a disaster. And for example, they created very famous Mass Effect series in Unreal Engine 3, and they have chosen completely different engine, Frostbite, completely not prepared for RPG games. And they told us that they needed to, for example, created menus, items, statistics of an items, and it was really difficult for them in Frostbite. So, for example, when you are playing Anthem, when you are playing Mass Effect Andromeda, to some extent, because I didn't play so far Dragon Age of Veilguard, you have this feeling that these are completely different games. They have Dragon Age in their name, they have Mass Effect in their name, but for example, for me, Mass Effect Andromeda was completely disastrous game. In fact, that it was completely not like Mass Effect trilogy. It was completely not like Mass Effect 1, Mass Effect 2, Mass Effect 3, and I think that the engine could be the main problem. But I'm talking to you about this because, for example, I am my opinion is that if you created a beautifully, very well developed IP, very well developed, good looking game like Borderlands 1 in 2009, and you are improving it, for me it's better option, even though more reputable than something which BioWare done, that they created. They are the best RPG studio. They are the best RPG studio so far, even with the disastrous Veilguard and Andromeda. And their mistake was that they wanted to create something new, something fresh, something different. But for me, it's a mistake. When you created a very famous title, like BioWare created Mass Effect title and Dragon Age title, and they were really very famous in RPG genre. They should improve it, like what Larian did with with Baldur's Gate 3. They created something like Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, which was created by BioWare, and they used different engine and they improved it, and so are doing developers and creators of Borderlands series. Each installment, each IP is improvement over the next one. Even, for example, there were serious critics. For example, when you watch Angry Joe review, he's criticizing very much main antagonists of Borderlands 3, and to some extent I agree that they are a little bit too Fortnite-ish, a little bit too obnoxious, especially if we compare it to Handsome Jack from the second Borderlands, or we compare it to Serena's and Atlas Corporation and General Knox from first installment, first Borderlands. They were a little bit too goofy, too obnoxious. The plot was too silly, too stupid, too archaic. But most of the elements of the games, except this one, except the plot, was really impressive. For example, for the first time in Borderlands 3, you could travel to different planets, and these planets were completely different than Pandora. Uh, so even this was a mistake, that the plot was a little bit too silly, not for mature players, and I agree with that. And we see that Borderlands 5 will be, I think, more mature game than Borderlands 3. But all other elements of Borderlands 5 are quality improvements. Are quality improvements. If this game was not as flashy as it is, I would say this is the best Borderlands game so far. Because for me, right now, the best installment in Borderlands genre is Borderlands 1 with all DLCs. But Borderlands 4 is just a little bit, a half inch under the Borderlands 1. So we have Borderlands 1, then Borderlands 3, and Borderlands prequel and Borderlands 2 are also very, very impressive games. So each of Borderlands game is really impressive. Maybe the worst is the prequel because it doesn't have DLCs, so it's a little bit too naked. Not so developed as Borderlands 2, 1 and 4. But they are still very good games. And even in genre of RPG games, the quests are really they are not the best, but they are still good. They are still good because, for example, we are aware that because it's an FPS RPG game, the quest cannot be as complicated as in Borderlands 1, Borderlands 2, Dragon Age Origins. They need to be snappier, they need to be faster, the action is faster. Yeah, it's faster in any way, but it should be so in FPS game. But still, I would say that Borderlands series is the first series which showed that FPS games can have RPG elements, massive RPG elements, to the point. Let me put it this way. I think that Borderlands skills and builds are even better than Dragon Age Origins builds. Better even than Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 builds. They are really, you see that someone who was creating these skill trees and how the skills work, how they look, how they behave, how they interact with each other, someone was a very intelligent person who created this. When you play in Borderlands 1, you are really impressed how skill trees improve and change your play style and your character. For example, when I played Borderlands 5, I was a little bit pissed at the beginning because everything was so flashy, so colorful, so almost like a rainbow whimsical game. But because of the skills and behavior of our characters and using of our skills and the fight, the shooting, the impressive weapon systems, I was really glad that I bought Borderlands 4, aka Borderlands 3. And I am impressed to this day. Today I want to download Borderlands 1, 2 and prequel and to play all classes again. And just after those I would play Borderlands 4 because for me it's a little bit too flashy. I want to compare them. But I hope that Borderlands 5 will be a little bit better than Borderlands 4 with no flashy effects, no my interface burning, zipping, poisoning and so on, because it's it makes my eyesight fatigue very fast, and with a little bit less action, because every Borderlands game is a very fast, very everything is changing, chasing. Enemies are screaming, they are talking to you, and so on. They have their own agendas. You have many bosses with different rants and so on. And I would say that new Borderlands game should be a little bit slower. Borderlands 1 in this regard is the best. It's fast in moments when it should be fast, but it is also mysteriously slow and even enigmatic in other parts of the game. And this was for me this mixed strategy was for me was the best. Let me know in the comments what do you expect, have hopes for in a new Borderlands game, Borderlands 5 aka Borderlands 4, and let me know in the comments your thoughts about our newest installment in Borderlands world and in Borderlands universe.